Everybody, my voice is a little dead today, so I do apologize, but we welcome all that are here. We have a full council today. Councilwoman Newell, Councilwoman Harrison, Councilwoman Freeman, myself, Councilwoman Stallings, and Councilwoman Lockhart. So welcome. We welcome also all of our staff who's here with us today, and we're glad to have you. I've asked Councilman Harrison if he'll open the meeting with a prayer.
Our dear Father in heaven, we are so grateful to be gathered together to determine what's best for the city and to hear ideas and collaborate and work together. We are grateful for all that you have provided this great city. We're grateful for our fire department and police department and all those that are in harm's way, and we ask for thy special blessing upon them and their families. We ask that thy Spirit may be with us, that we may be guided to do what's best for the city and be accountable to our residents. And we say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Councilman Harris. Everything's presented in front of you. You should have an agenda. We'll start with that. Let me remind the audience that today is a work session until our general session tonight at 7, so there won't be any public comment during this portion of our meeting. So we'll start with 2.1, the park tax recipient report from the Harrington Center for the Arts. Are they here? Awesome. Come to the podium, tell us who you are, and give us a report.
What do I need to do to get on here? Hello, Mayor and City Council. Thank you for this opportunity to report on our park tax grant. I'm just going to get this screenplay technology going. Yeah, but hey, we can put it right here. Dongle, yeah.
Okay, we'll go to 2.2, the noise ordinance review. Kim, I think you've got some stuff on that.
And by the way, I think Craig is online from our legal department. He's helped work on this as well. So let's see. Okay. Just a little bit of background. So for two of you, this is just going to be a review. So last year, I think about mid-year, we brought a draft through. We received some input, and then we came back. Anyways, I think it was in December the last time we presented some draft changes. And at that point, it was the last meeting with quite a few of the old council members, and they just said, let's bring all this back when we have the new council, and we'll just kind of run back through this. So I'll just kind of walk you through the current ordinance and then just show you, kind of highlight what changes have been proposed in the draft that we have right now. And then this is really for you to tell us, like, hey, we're on the right track, or no, we want something totally different, or make some tweaks, whatever you'd like to do. So, and like I said, Craig's online. He's helped do some research, and I know Ryan's spent some time kind of looking at it as well. So between the three of us, hopefully we can answer any questions that you have. So, yeah, if we can go back to the screen. Okay. So yeah, in this first section with the findings, it's really just explaining why do we want to control noise. And, there's obviously some harmful effects that noise can have, especially in the middle of the night, or if it's super loud, whatever that might be, actual physical harm if you're inside a building and the decibel levels go over a certain level. So this findings is really just kind of the why behind the ordinance. But in this first section, we do propose, and it's in a couple of other sections, you'll see we're changing an offense. Like if somebody is, what am I trying to say? Somebody breaks the law for our noise ordinance. Instead of a Class B misdemeanor, we're proposing to change it to a Class C. And there's Class B is a very serious offense. It's jail time, up to $1,000 fine. It just seems really heavy-handed for somebody making too much noise. So Class C still, it's not nothing, but it's probably fits more to what we felt like for the offense. Oops, let me go back here. And then, the next sections that it starts to describe, well, what kind of noises are we talking about? And it categorizes 3 different types of noises. And I don't really want to, if you've read this or you can read this, I don't think we need to spend time going into the different types of noises. But yeah, some of them are just commerce, normal, like somebody's putting a roof on their house, and then there's noises that are caused by machinery or business, and then there's intentionally caused noises that people, are doing maybe to annoy people or just ignoring. It's after the quiet hours, which we'll get to in a second here. So again, that one has the Class C instead of Class B misdemeanor in it. Okay. And then the intent, again, just kind of talks about our intent with the noise ordinance, and we're trying to take into account the latest scientific advances, which we'll talk about with the measuring device in a second here. So then probably the first kind of the next revision after the Class B to C is the hours. And we talked about, this was just from our last meeting in December. 6 a.m. seemed a little bit early for people to be able to start exceeding certain decibels of noise. And we did some research. We looked into quite a few other cities, and it seemed like 7 was definitely the predominant start time. There were other cities that had 6 a.m., but they were more the anomalies. So we felt like 7 would probably be a better start time. Now, one of the things that we talked about, and we could still do this, is, maybe we have summer versus fall and winter, distinguish, because during summer you may have, you know, for the example of the roofing crews, they want to start early to avoid the heat. Is 6 a.m. acceptable in the summer when, you know, kids aren't in school or what? I don't know. There may be different reasons, and we could do that. We could say, you know, from June 1st to August 31st, it's 6 a.m. is when the quiet hour stops. So yeah, like I said, just let me know if as we go through this, if you feel strongly about any of this or you want us to do more research, we're happy to do that. Okay, and then it's mentioned again, just how we define night and day and what hours that means. The limitation of peak intensity sound. So this is where we get into, we want to make sure that how we measure the sound is being done with the latest industry accepted standards as far as instruments go. I think Councilmember Newell provided some input on some of these, which we think would be great if you want to incorporate that. But yeah, instead of, it used to talk about microphones and things like that, so we're just saying the sound level meter shall be a type 1 or a type 2 instrument, which has some meaning in the sound science world. That we would have to make sure, you know, if we buy something to measure sound with, we'd make sure it meets those ANSI standards, American, yeah. Those are the formal standards that people have for those noise instruments. Let's see, and then we get into, you know, how do we measure the noise? Where do we place the device? And so this section, and who is going to be doing the measuring. So I think maybe that number 1 is got some newer language. The designated individual shall either be a peace officer from the police department or our code enforcement officer, which, by the way, just a quick update, we're actually doing interviews this Thursday for that position. So we're grateful that that position is funded and we're moving forward. So we should have our code enforcement officer on board in the next 30 days, depending on how the hiring process goes. So.
And Kim, can you?
Yeah.
That's gonna. What department in the city will that be part of yours?
Community development.
Okay.
Yeah. I know there was some discussion. It probably could fit under either police or community development, and we've taken the direction to put it under community development. Yeah. They'll obviously coordinate very closely with legal. Parks. Our vision of that would be that we still would have kind of a committee of sorts, but the person we hire would be the central, you know, person that manages and keeps track of all of the cases. And then as they need input from, you know, if it's something that they need help with the police, which we definitely, a lot of the applicants, by the way, are retired police officers, which, you know, we're going to debate the pros and cons of each of the applicants' qualifications, but if whoever we hire, if they don't have a police background, or even if they do, if there's ever a time that they feel like they might be in harm's way, or, you know, somebody's really angry and they don't want to go knock on their door, we're going to get the police involved and send the police out. So, and these noise complaints probably would be one of those when you go, you know, at midnight or 1 a.m.
Mr. Mayor, if I may. Kim, where are they driving their lawful authority if they're not from the police department?
I think just by city statute. I'll let Ryan jump in on that.
Yeah, they wouldn't issue a citation.
Okay,
when it comes to an actual citation that needs to be issued, it would have to be law enforcement. So,
yeah, and I think that would be appropriate.
I guess they do the investigation, the legwork, and that's one of the things we're going to be looking at too. Is can they document very well, you know, everything that they've done, so that if it does go to a citation, we have everything. They don't have to redo what this person's already done. So, okay, so it talks about the placement of the meter. Talks about how far away from walls and buildings and things like that, because noise, you know, it has very interesting properties, just like water or anything. It can bounce around and amplify and reflect off other objects and things like that. So this is just trying to be fair and consistent on where we would allow a noise measurement to be taken from. And then 2, we've added a statement that just make sure then let's see as we go down here. Let's see. Yeah, so if we do go into a building, and this would be, say you have a dance going on or something, even high school dance, and the volume's too loud. This talks about how we would measure it inside. And then we've talked a lot about 4. We wanted to make sure if a noise source is identifiable at a particular location, and it can be measured from either, like, say it's coming from a source and you can measure it, there's commercial property and residential. Well, we're going to take the most restrictive. So if they're violating the residential noise limit, we would cite them, or they would be asked to stop the noise source. 5, we talked about in December. I think the previous draft on 5, we had it like 3 minutes is how long the noise had to be going, like continuous noise. We had to measure it for quite a long period before it would be constituted a valid measurement. We shortened that to 30 seconds. I'd looked at some other cities, and 3 minutes seemed really long. So we're proposing 30 seconds. Again, that could change if you feel like that's too short. Let's see. And then as we get into the rest of this, there's several tables that this is where we actually list, if you're in this type of zoning, this is your maximum noise during the day, this is your maximum noise during the night. And we're just making some changes to that. We don't have an industrial zone anymore. We used to. But now we do still have light industrial, and then we have other commercial zones, and then you've got your residential agricultural. So we're just trying to clean that up and match our current zones. Let's see. So it does allow, as we get towards the end of the ordinance, it does allow us to make exemptions. And we need to do that for, if we have a firework display on 4th of July, things like that. Or and then this does talk about sports events, other things. It didn't really specify who granted the exemption, so this now, if Jason's comfortable, it would be the city administrator, or I'm sure anybody else that you wanted to designate, or if you wanted to keep it in your hands, we could have it come. But sometimes it takes more time to go through that process. So let's see, and then these are kind of a list of what noises are considered exempt, and obviously emergency vehicles, when they go out on their calls in the middle of the night, we don't want them to not be able to use their lights and sirens. But we also added just roadway noise, other than if somebody has an improperly muffled engine, like if they're street racing or whatever, that could still be cited. And then we also added, if there's any other state or federal preemption, such as when the front runner had to start using their horns because of the quiet zone. There were a couple of intersections that fell out of compliance after they made some updates. And then, I guess under that B, that's where we cover athletic events. And I think we added that it was either public or private could ask for an exemption. I think we just struck public social events so that it, because you may have, private sports clubs that need an exemption. And then let's see, responsibility for violations. So who do we actually cite? If it's on a property that somebody's leasing and they're making the noise, do we cite the owner of the property? Do we cite the person making the noise? And this tries to define, and it could be any of the, anyone who's associated with that noise could be in violation. Let's see. Oh, yeah.
Is it one or the other, or is it an and or?
Let's see. I'm trying to remember. The following persons or entities may be held responsible. I think under.
It's an and or. We can charge all involved.
There you go. Yeah, I guess that very last sentence. Responsibility may be assigned to one or more of the above parties, jointly or individually. Okay, let's see. Here's our Class C misdemeanor again. And I think that's the end of the ordinance. Yeah, like I said, we've done quite a bit of research, but we're happy to, if you think there needs to be more, or we looked originally at Provo Cities. They just revamped theirs last year, and theirs was a little unique because they have BYU and they have, I don't know, there's certain things that are unique to their city, but they actually simplified a lot of their tables. Their old ordinance was actually almost identical to ours. But anyways, I think we've taken more of a, I guess, a gentle approach that, hey, maybe we just make some of these low-hanging fruit updates. We can always come back. We can see how this goes, see how, as we now have the code enforcement officer, but if there's something that we start to see this really still isn't clear, or this is overkill or underdoing it, we can come back or make more amendments. So anyways, that really is all we wanted to do, is just show you what we have. And I think like I said, the previous council wanted to make sure that you had a chance to review it. If you're comfortable, we would schedule it for action. Just put it on the next, the 27th, or we could put it on February's. We'll take your lead.
I'll make a comment. Is that okay?
Yeah.
I think we should keep a consistent time. I think 7 a.m. seems reasonable to me.
Okay.
I don't think we need roofers or anyone starting before 7 a.m. They
Okay.
can get their equipment before then. They can arrive at the site. But
Yeah.
Personally, I've had roofers next door to me, and I think 7 was a good time for them. So Yeah.
It's close to home, yeah.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? That was my question too. Did you find any other cities that were doing summer hours, or was it most cities were consistently 7 for the ones that you found?
Craig.
Yes. Vineyard actually has an exception to the hours on the months of July and August. They exempt the hours just based on heat. Mm-hmm. So there are cities that do or have winter and summer changing, but most of them are pretty consistent.
Okay. And then this other question I had, with the time where you dropped that to 30 seconds, were you able to find other cities that had listed the amount of time they measure for, or was that?
So it's interesting. So for continuous noise, that's anywhere from 30 seconds to 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. For intermittent noises, that's all over the board as well. Where we're kind of mixing them together. That's why we had the 30 seconds. Again, that varies widely between different cities. Continuous, some cities have as much as 10 minutes. Of a continuous sound, but that's, it all depends on that. So really, it's where you want to go with that, just because there's differing between each of the cities.
Yeah, just logically, it sounds more on track to have the 30 seconds. I was just wondering what kind of consistency you found. It did seem like 3 minutes was a long period of time to try and get that measurement. So.
Yeah. And again, like I mentioned before, sorry, I apologize.
No, you're good, Craig. Go ahead.
Like I mentioned before, in the, almost 9-10 years that I've been here, really the only noise cases that have made it all the way to court have been dog barking cases that have been prosecuted under the nuisance ordinance. The biggest thing we're looking for is compliance over conviction on these, is to make it so people know that there's relief if someone next to them is violating the law.
Yeah. No, I appreciate these changes. I think 7 a.m. makes sense. I try to think of it as a parent. If I had a small baby sleeping, I don't think 6 a.m. is reasonable. I think 7 a.m. is a little better. And I think I heard Provo has, 3 or 4 civilian code enforcement officers. So I know this is new for Lehi City. I think the police department won't complain too much about offloading the code enforcement responsibilities, but if you have a relationship with their department that runs code enforcement, I'd be interested to hear kind of their strategies. The one most difficult part about this is enforcement, right? Especially if you have a noise at 1 a.m. and it's loud, right? It lasts for 2 seconds, and maybe a couple minutes later it's loud again. The whole neighborhood's up, but how do you prove the noise happened? I was thinking through this a little bit. Is there, I guess, a legal way, and maybe this is for Craig and Ryan, if, obviously nobody has noise detectors outside their home to detect noise, but if you have complaints from maybe 2 or 3 people in a certain area that says, hey, this has happened, we can't prove it, but we all woke up at the same time, how would we go about enforcing that? Or would that pass that threshold of enforcement?
So I've seen that before, and typically, like I said, that mainly deals with dogs barking or mufflers or those types of things. And typically we can go after those types of incidents through our nuisance code. So if there's a certain number of incidents and those types of things, and then those individuals, if they're charged with the nuisance, would come into court and testify in front of the judge. And then, as long as it met the elements of our nuisance code, which we've done that before on these ones where you can't get the measurement because of the time and those types of things. So I think we have our nuisance code that can handle a lot of these issues, but the sound ordinance also gathers in the things that are outside the nuisance code as well. There is some overlap, but I think with both of these codes, we would be in a better position to enforce those noises and show our citizens that, hey, we're trying to make a proactive, choice to make it so all the citizens can enjoy some quiet during the nighttime hours.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Let's see, I had one more question, but I forgot, so I'll turn it over.
What is the city currently using to measure noise? Since you're talking about a type 1 or type 2 device, do we have something that we're using?
I'll let Craig
I don't know what
jump
it's
in,
called,
but
it's like it's just a
yeah,
really low technology
rudimentary.
decibel meter.
yeah. When you can even download an app on your phone, and I think that's what sometimes they've just to kind of get at least a rough ballpark of, is this 85 decibels or is it 100? But we plan to buy one, and I think, was it Bo that was looking into purchasing?
He did buy one.
Oh, okay.
He's right there.
Oh. He knows more about it.
Yeah, so we currently have a Type 2 device that we've purchased. We haven't deployed it because this code came out. And after talking with the police department, they feel like if we're going to be taking these, if one of these cases goes to the legal route, that they felt like they probably needed the best, a Type 1 type device. So that device hasn't been deployed, but we have it. We played with it, trying to figure it out. So we will be in the process of looking to purchase a Type 1. So
Thank you. Yeah, it looks like the type 2 are for screening more, and type 1 are for if you're going to court.
yeah,
Good job.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So, Bo, sorry,
Yeah.
and go back to Rachel. She's not done. But is this what we discussed that you would purchase already, or is this something new you purchased?
yeah. So it was a $500 device, so it wasn't
The Type 2 one?
the Type 2 one was.
Okay.
And really it was before this code came out that said we needed a Type 1 or Type 2, so we didn't really know what we were looking for. I talked with the old council, and they asked us to look at purchasing a device, so we went ahead and purchased one. But then after talking with the police department and this code, this part of the code came out, we decided we probably should have a Type 1 device.
Okay. What's the price tag for that?
Yeah, anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000.
Okay. And legal feels that that's what's needed if it is taken to court?
So I haven't talked with legal yet. We just met last week with the police department. That was their feeling, and Chief can speak to that if he would like. But I think I'm kind of summing up our conversation. So we'll do whatever you guys tell us to do. Regardless, we have to buy a calibrator for our Type 2 if we don't. But they just felt like if we were going to be, if any of these went the legal route, that we probably should have a Type 1 device.
Mr. Mayor, oh, sorry, did you have something?
Yeah, it's actually for Kim. Thank you. Just on time of day and this code enforcer from the planning department, will they be working in the evening and into the middle of the night, or will they only be enforcing code from 8 to 5?
Yeah, our expectation is they would just work normal daytime hours. But I think if we had a noise issue that was, came up frequently, we might have them say, take the morning off and you're going to be checking this out at night. But I would think the police would be the primary responders, especially if it's just like, random, somebody's playing their stereo too loud at 1 a.m., it's going to be the police that go out.
Yeah, I'm just very concerned for this person's safety and want to make sure
Yeah.
they're working with the police department and that they don't enter any situation that would cause harm for them or anything like that.
I agree. Yeah, 100%.
You have a comment?
Can I just?
Yes, please.
Thank you. So the strategy we discussed with the city was that our officers that are working the night shift would have the measuring device at their disposal. So they would take it, respond to the area, get a measurement, and then using a Type 3 that's calibrated regularly would allow us to take enforcement action immediately. And while we're talking code in general, I would say that any time we're going to take an enforcement action, we have officers assigned to code. We would prefer to have officers there while enforcement's being made, whether it's a civilian making contact or an officer. Our role would be to keep the peace and make sure that it runs smoothly without putting anybody into any type of harm. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may, and I think, most of these code enforcements are going to be happening during the day. It'll have to do with, overhanging trees or bushes. And I think sometimes an armed police officer, I've heard anecdotes from our officers where it actually escalates when they see an armed police officer coming to their door. It kind of raises other safety issues too. So I think it's good that Emily raised that, and I think we can find some good balance. I remember the couple questions I had. The decibel standards, can you explain, are those the same as they've always been? Where do they come from? And then also, one issue I think for measuring, I think if if I'm in the second story of my house and I hear a noise coming from across the neighborhood, it'll be louder than if I'm standing at the front door of my house, right? So I think if we can add just a little bit of language in trying to get the measuring device as close to where the sound has been heard, as in most people sleep, if you're in a two-story house, many bedrooms are on the second story, I think you're going to get a different measurement compared to at ground level with a fence and cars and other things in between the noise and the ears of the people hearing it.
Yeah, and that is covered here unless you want to make some changes, but it does talk about it could be placed at any point on the property line or any point 50 feet from the noise source. So, and I guess in your example, in the backyard, you could place the noise meter on your back or near your back fence so that you make sure, because your house would act as a natural sound barrier.
Yeah, it's more of an elevation issue, right?
Oh, yeah.
So if it's 2 feet above the ground versus 15 or 20 feet above the ground, it's more of a direct line to sounds that you may hear.
Yeah, and this does say it has to be at least 5 feet from any wall and not less than 3 feet above the ground. So
nothing in there would stop law enforcement or or the code enforcement officer from measuring it from your window or from the second story of your home.
Yeah, because it would be at least 3 feet above. Yeah.
Okay. And then the decibel question, if you could.
These decibel limits have been in here for a long time. It, goes back quite a ways.
It's my understanding in looking at all the other codes from the other cities that these are the general accepted limits, the generally accepted in the community limits throughout the state of Utah.
great. Thank you.
Councilwoman Stallings.
Thank you. So we've been through this for a long time now. But you originally, you looked at Provo and what the updates they made, and they simplified their noise ordinance. And originally, that's our first draft. Our first attempt at that was similar. So I would love for the rest of the council to see that original draft. I'm not saying, I think maybe a mesh of the two would be good, but it certainly simplified things.
These tables are probably the biggest difference.
Yeah. And then you don't have to wonder what kind of noise it is and what definition it fits into. But it did have in there, you talked about who grants the exemptions, and in that original draft, it was the mayor, the mayor's designee. And I feel more comfortable with that if, legislative elected body, votes for a code or an ordinance. I think it should be an elected individual who grants exemptions for that. So again, I think looking at both those drafts and finding what's good in both of them and putting it together might be a good way to go. Appreciate the chief explaining how it will be enforced, and that's, I did ask a police officer about, how they enforce it, and they usually just use their phone, and that seems to be good enough to just kind of get a reading. Okay, yeah, it's bad. Maybe go talk to the neighbor, turn down the radio or whatever. So that this code won't prevent that from happening, correct? It's mostly we need the device if it goes to court kind of thing. Okay.
If we want to charge under this code, we still have the city nuisance code that we can use as well.
Okay. Yeah, and going back with the original draft, it did have, and I think our current code has this, where it the sound level measurements are preferred but not necessarily required. So again, I get that you want the black and white readings if you're going to take this to court for for a violation, but I just don't want that to prevent an officer from just saying, hey, these levels look pretty high. Can you just, keep it down or whatever? So that's kind of my concern. I just, let's see, got more questions. It's taking out. And then I think James brought up a good point, though, where it's the measurement is being taken from. I think it should be from the receiving location and 50 feet from the noise source. If it travels pretty far, I just don't want either or in there. I would like it taken from where the complaint is coming from. Does that make sense?
Councilmember or Mr. Mayor, help me understand that, because that could get really dicey if we're hearing noises miles away. Am I misunderstanding what you're saying? I'm hoping for clarity.
No, it actually protects the person emitting the noise better.
Yeah, help me understand.
Because what don't you understand?
Just based on what you said, I'm thinking I could be 3 miles away or 3 feet away, and I'm just trying to understand how we would record this.
Because if you're closer to the noise source, the louder it would be. So if you take it from where the complaint is coming from, then you're getting an accurate reading of if it's truly a nuisance or not from that point.
Okay, thank you.
Let me see my notes. No, I think that's all. I do agree 7 a.m. and is a good time, and also not to change it based on winter or summer. Appreciate that. That's it. Thank you.
Councilwoman Freeman.
Yeah, can we look at 535, please?
Yeah.
And is there, I know we're talking about a misdemeanor here. Is there like a warning clause or anything? Like if someone, this is this one-time thing, like how is this?
So we don't usually build those in because that's kind of officer discretion.
Okay.
But yeah, the approach of the city so far, not just on noise ordinance, but really any code enforcement has been to try to get voluntary compliance, and only if somebody's resistant to that, do we go to a citation? So I would assume that would be the same approach. Because a lot of people, it's really an issue of education at first. Most people, once they know, most reasonable people, once they know what the code is, like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'll move my car, or I'll be quiet or something like that. It's only the few that are resistant to that we have to kind of go through the criminal process.
Okay, I just didn't know if we had to write in like a 3-strike thing or something.
I mean, you could, but yeah, we don't have that in there for now.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry. One more comment.
Are you done?
Well, yeah, she can ask it. It's right here, 535.
Yeah.
I want to look over it at some point, but
Go ahead, Councilwoman Stallings.
Yeah, changing the violation. I'm okay leaving it Class B, not, with the understanding we want to educate more than we want to, what did they say, compliance over conviction. I agree with that for sure. But I just know that in other places in our municipal code, even animal control, some of those violations are still Class B, and, it seems consistent with what I'm seeing in the code. So I just don't want this to become like a shrug, like, yeah, I'll pay the fine or whatever. I do want some teeth to it, but I prefer not to have to go that route. And that's my understanding is what we do.
okay, so just reading over this, the designated individual responsible for measuring noise. Okay, we talked about that. The microphone may be placed at any point on the property line or at any point 50 feet from the noise source. And at least 5 feet from any wall, 3 feet above the ground. Okay. Yeah, and just comparing it to other noise ordinances, it seems like this one is pretty good, generous. I mean, 85 decibels is pretty loud, 50 feet is pretty far. So I'm fine with using this as a starting point for a noise ordinance for now.
Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure how many edits we want to this. I'm just thinking about when we can put it on the agenda for action. Do we have enough edits, maybe Kim, to bring it again before we vote, or how do you suggest?
Yeah, I could go either way. From what I'm hearing tonight, it's pretty, we're talking maybe 10% variance from what we already have. So if generally you like most of what's in here, and, I guess the Class B versus C would be a great, I don't know, that's how Councilmember Stallings feels, but we might just have to put it in one way or the other, and then when you vote, you'd have to, if you don't like what's in the draft, you could just say, either not vote for the motion to approve or make a motion but change that. I don't know.
No, that's just what I was going to mention, is that it's Are you comfortable with us putting everybody's individual edits in the draft? Do you want a consensus on which edits should come before you for a final draft? That's the kind of direction that's really helpful, just so we don't necessarily do this again. But if all 5 of you are comfortable with each of your individual input being put in the ordinance, then we'll draft it that way, and then we'll see how it comes out when it comes back on the action agenda.
Kim, can you summarize all our points?
Yeah.
See what you remember?
At some point.
Yeah, I'll probably go back and listen to the minutes, but the misdemeanor is definitely, that's, at least I've heard from one, that different than what's in here. I think the 7 a.m., everybody's good. We don't want to do anything different. We don't want different summer hours. And then you probably saw in the draft here, I think that's probably a good change to just say obtained from the city administrator. Oh, I guess I need to change that one. I'll change that to the mayor or his designee. So he could just say, hey, Jason, I'm comfortable with you doing these unless you have any questions. But yeah, so I would probably just put that into the draft. And then I think everybody was good on the measuring device. I don't know if there are really any other.
That's where I had a question too, if I.
Yep, go ahead.
I am concerned about the cost of $5,000 to $10,000 for measuring devices and the possibility that we'll need multiples of these for those who are on duty. I guess I defer to Craig and Ryan on that. of what kind of measurement do you think you're going to need to be able to have a prosecution case that would?
Yeah, I'll probably. Yeah, Craig, why don't you answer that just as far as calibration? And as far as multiples, I don't think we'd need more than one. Just
Okay.
That's kind of cost prohibitive.
Yeah.
Just knowing, again, like Craig says, over the last 9 or 10 years, this ordinance just hasn't come up often enough. My opinion, maybe yours is different, to justify, $20,000 to $30,000 worth of devices. But that's kind of for you to decide.
No,
Go ahead, Craig.
And ultimately, the standard that we're looking for is proof beyond a reasonable doubt. So absolutely the type 1 device where it's calibrated and it's just got that little extra is kind of the gold standard. If you look at it, and Chief can talk to this with regards to traffic enforcement, you've got your radar, you've got LiDAR. They both have different pluses and minuses, but they measure speed in a different way. However, we can get convictions off both. So I think if our code says that a type 2 device is fine, and as we go through and try some of these cases, unless we have an attorney or someone bring up, hey, your type 2 device is not correct or it's not calibrated correctly, then we would probably have to upgrade to the type 1 device. But I think with a type 1 or a type 2 device, we could go forward. And as long as we have the evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, I don't see an issue prosecuting that.
Yeah, that was my main concern, is making sure